He has spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J Loren Norris.
Back in the day, actually 3 decades ago this year, I served in what was called the alarm room while on active duty as a firefighter. The alarm room, otherwise known as 911 operator. Part of my job was to dispatch firefighters to an event, an incident, a crash, a car crash, a medical emergency, whatever else. And one of the things that I had to be able to do was to gain enough information from the reporting caller to be able to give the firefighters at least a heads up. What kind of truck do you need to take? What kind of equipment do you need to take? Is this an auto accident where you're going to have to cut somebody out of the car? You need the jaws of life. Is this a grass fire where you need the big giant field truck with the oversized tires and the off-road capability to drive through a pasture and spray water on the fire? Is this a structural fire where you need a truck with a lot of ladders? All of those are different factors in fighting a fire. And believe it or not, you know this because you know that if you set the paper in your shredder bin on fire, that's a different kind of fire than if you, let the bacon go too long on the stove at home and now you have a grease fire in the kitchen. And you know that one of those you can douse with water and the other one you have to use flour. But there's a reality in the communications of our team members, our employees, our family, that looks kind of like a fire that's raging out of control. And sometimes those stories are as simple as the paper in your shredder bin, and sometimes they're as crazy as a grease fire on the kitchen stove, but sometimes they're worse than that. And the worst story fire, I use that as an analogy, the worst story/fire that a leader can encounter is the dumpster fire story. You need to avoid a dumpster fire story at all costs. Avoid it like the plague. That's what I want to talk about today on Leading Leaders.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.
I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and I can tell you from experience that uncertainty that comes from rolling up on the scene of a dumpster fire, knowing that, the waste paper bin of your shredder, that's pretty predictable. It's paper. Worst case scenario, cardboard. It's going to burn at a very modest temperature. Usually a cup of water from the water cooler is going to put it out. If it gets out of control, maybe you need a hose, but for the most part, it's not hot, it's not big, it's not going to spread very far, very fast, and it's easily controllable. A grass fire, on the other hand, I fought fires that were 40, 50 acres of grass fire where there were oil tanks and live cattle in the middle of the fire that we couldn't even get to with the truck. We had to get out of the truck and walk acres to get to them. And those are different kinds of fires, but with a grass fire, you have a pretty good idea what to expect. The one you have no idea what to expect is the dumpster fire. Why is it that the dumpster fire is so crazy, unpredictable? Well, because nobody has any idea what's in a dumpster. Think about it. What do you throw away in a dumpster? Let's say you're remodeling a house and you've got empty air cartridges from your nail gun, or you've got empty spray cans from, sealant or foam. You've got combustible items and products. You've got pieces of metal. Maybe you've got a little propane tank from one of the brazing torches that you use to do the plumbing with. And right next to that, you've got a bunch of nails that wouldn't go through the nail gun, or they're bent because you pulled them out of the wall. Well, see, in the form of a fire, that's called shrapnel. Because if that propane bottle gets overheated, when it detonates, it's throwing nails everywhere. Shrapnel. That's very deadly. That's a horrible combination. But when you think about a dumpster, especially at a remodeling site or a construction site where all kinds of things are going on, you have no idea what to expect in it. Put that behind a grocery store. Put that giant dumpster, say, in an apartment complex. You got 1,000 people throwing stuff in there. You have no idea what could be in there. I remember responding to a fire one time and smoke just pouring out of the dumpster. And when we finally got it open, we found that somebody had thrown a cigarette into the belly of an oversized teddy bear. And as the teddy bear was smoldering, it was filling the dumpster with smoke, and the smoke was coming out in every way. There really wasn't ever a flaming fire inside that dumpster, but there was a lot of smoke. See, when we run into people whose lives have been a disaster, people that maybe we're considering hiring them for our team, or bringing them into our family or our other relationships, and they begin with kind of the stories that you hear of the pain here and the bad relationship there and the breakup here and the mistreatment here and the victimhood here. And sometimes those little stories, they're like that propane bottle. Yeah, you know at some moment, if that's not controlled, it's going to go off. And when it goes off, there's going to be shrapnel. Now, what flies out of there may be the stuffings of a teddy bear. It may be the nails from a nail gun. You don't know. And because that's true, that story that comes to you like a dumpster fire, that every second reveals something new and different and unpredictable, that you've got to be concerned about as a leader. There's nothing you can do to go back, so to speak, and unpack everything in the dumpster. That's the job of a therapist. It's complicated work. Pulling out one aspect and dealing with that aspect, and how did it get here, and how dangerous is it, and what if it goes off, and how do we cope with that? As a firefighter, I'm going to fill that thing with water and cool it off as fast as I can to get rid of the fire before something else goes wrong. But as a leader, I'm not qualified to do that. That's the job of a therapist, maybe a pastor or a counselor. Maybe as a coach, I would take them on as a client, but not as their leader. I'm not responsible both for unpacking the dumpster that is their life and also trying to lead them forward in life. That's going to be really complicated. Now, let me also say, a lot of leadership books that you'll read today, in fact, several of the books from John Maxwell talk about how the leader has to be a coach. And I agree with that. I agree that we need to have a coaching mentality, always asking the question, always as a leader driving someone forward into a new awareness of themselves and the people around them. But I also believe that there's a lot of leadership that takes on itself a type of therapy that tries to help the people working within that organization in a new kind of way. And that, I think, is risky, because if you're not qualified as a therapist, you may start asking questions that can lead to greater harm, that can uncover unknown pitfalls in a relationship. Now, I can tell you, though, as a leader, when you start to interview someone for a position, when you just start to get to know someone in a relationship, there should be, in your own mind, some questions that correlate to your core values. Maybe it's the core values of your organization. Maybe it's the core values of your family. Maybe it's the core values of the people that you want to have close to you in your life, that you want to be important to you. And if you don't start up front asking those questions early on in the, dating relationship, the courting relationship, when you're courting an employee, especially a high value, and when I say high value, I mean high paid employee, high ranked employee, someone who's going to have a lot of influence on others in your organization, like a C-level suite or a chief marketing officer, somebody like that. When these kind of people come into your organization, it's not just about the relationship they have with you. It's about the relationship they have with everybody else. They're going to have influence beyond their interaction with you. If you're not going to take the time to dig into the stories of their life and figure out, am I dealing with some waste paper baskets or some grass fires, some predictable human history? Everybody's got a story. Everybody comes with luggage. There is not a time that you're going to travel without luggage. Even if it's just an overnight bag with a toothbrush in it, you're coming with luggage. Some people roll up, the whole airport cart that comes through, everything on the cart is theirs. That's a different problem. But if you're going to have an interaction with somebody, you're going to have a relationship with someone, as you're building that relationship needs to include asking the questions like, what's in your luggage? What is it that you're bringing to this party? What are we going to need to talk about sooner or later? What do we need to talk about soon? What do we need to talk about like right now? Because if there are issues in there that later reveal themselves that you thought you had a grass fire on your hand and you actually have oil storage tanks or propane tanks, the big giant gas tanks like they use out in the country to cool and heat people's homes. If you've got one of those and you're unaware of it, you're going to have a problem. If you roll up on a car crash and you realize after you get there, this car's a hybrid or it's purely electric, you can't just go spraying water on a fire like that, you got a different kind of problem. Well, that's basically what happens as a leader when you don't ask those questions up front. If you don't get to know the people that you're dealing with, you may find yourself standing toe-to-toe with death, and by that I mean a dumpster fire. You're going to have to take the time yourself to dig into this. You're going to have to ask the questions. But before you ask the questions, you've got to begin to ask yourself, what is it that really matters to me? What is it that I need to know about this person before they're a part of my team? What is it that I need to know, need to be aware of, need to be prepared for before we engage in this ongoing relationship, especially if it's going to be a long-term relationship? Before I invest my time, talent, treasure, and attention, and the rest of my team in this individual, what do I need to know about them? Well, if you as a leader haven't asked yourself those questions first, you'll never be able to ask those questions of the person that you're interviewing or considering bringing on board your team. I know people who have hired coaches because the coach had a promise that they were going to make their book a bestseller, or they were going to get them out there in front of audiences, or they were going to make them the best speaker in the world. And those promises are kind of in their ironclad guarantee, money back, 30-day warning kind of hoopla that, really is just there to close the deal. But there's always a kind of a backdoor in that loop that says, if you don't do the work that I tell you to do, even if you find it silly, then I'm out of my clause. I can't be held accountable, but you still have to pay. If I told you that I'll make you a millionaire by the end of the year, but you had to stand on your foot for 18 hours, 1 foot in the middle of Times Square, absolutely naked, or the whole deal is off, I still get paid, but you don't become a millionaire. That's the out of the clause. There are people who will do the same thing in your relationships. It's not just coaches. It's not just salespeople. It's not just people who want to present a product or service to you. It's the people who want to be on your team. I reminded you a couple of weeks ago of a guy that in the job interview said, I have successfully sued every one of my past employers. I've made more money in lawsuits than I've made on salary. Okay, if you can't uncover questions like that, my friends, is a dumpster fire. That's the kind of story that you ought to be getting into before you even roll out the trucks, so to speak. You need to get the answers to the questions. If somebody called 911 and said to me, I smell smoke. Great. Are you in the kitchen? Well, actually, I am. Have you checked the bacon? Oh my gosh, I forgot about the bacon. That might be why you smell smoke. I smell smoke. Where are you? I'm standing out in a pasture. What color is the smoke? Can you see it? See, all of these things are questions we need to be asking. We need to be asking the same thing of potential employees or team members. If you as a leader don't take the time to do that, but you expect that of other people on your team, that's going to be a problem. If you as a leader don't take the time to do that and you bring that person on board whose story, their backstory, their life story, every story they tell is a dumpster fire, then you are asking for an emotional basket case in your workplace. And they're going to come with all kinds of baggage. Now, they may come presenting to you perfectly up front. They've got just the right story. They've got all the right questions to match their resume. They've got a background that sounds stellar. They've got all the perfect witnesses, if you will, who will testify to their power and their magnificence and their wonderful. Because I know you've never had anyone lie on a resume or create fake references or have some kind of testimonial from a person that's unfindable. They don't have that job anymore. They don't have that title anymore. In fact, they've been remarried 4 times. They don't even have that name anymore. But that testimonial is still on the resume. That is a potential dumpster fire. That's the report of the smell of smoke, but you don't have any idea what's behind it. As a leader, you are responsible for the way that your team meshes together, their productivity, their success, and all of those factors. And those factors will be directly related to the stories that are told by your team members to each other, by your team members to your customers, by your customers to each other, and by your customers to the world. In fact, that's known as your brand, what other people say about you when you're not in the room. If every person you bring on your team is fascinating and interesting and their backgrounds are so diverse because they have a dumpster fire of a story for their life, you are opening up a can of worms you may not be able to get the lid back on. Take the time to ask the questions. First, of yourself. What is important to me? What kind of persons do I want on my team? What kind of backgrounds are going to be beneficial? What will make their experience, their education, their interactions from the past powerful and productive for us? And if you can't ask those questions yourself first, then find a mentor, find a coach who can help you dig into those questions so that when you do the interview, when you have that first conversation, when you make the consideration, will I have this person on the team or not, you're prepared. And you'll recognize a dumpster fire story when you begin to hear one. It only takes a little bit of time if you're asking the right questions up front. I challenge you as leaders to ask those questions. Otherwise, you may be walking into something absolutely unexpected. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.